Let's try that again, shall we? I don't know if anyone else will follow us or find this now, but I don't know why it shut down then when I was doing that one. I have just emailed the chaps, and we will see if the chaps turn up or if anyone else turns up. In the meantime, a song. Ah, don't you just hate technology? Let's see. Yeah, we are back. Did that come back, Sean? Did that come back where we left off? Or are we somewhere else now? I guess we're somewhere else. I've sent an email to the boys. What can I do to prod them, I wonder? What can I do to prod them to get them to come back? Come back, all is forgiven. Just when we were going to get all the dirt um, on FrSky. Right, it's dropped to the Facebook as well. See if they'll come there. Yeah, this load shedding has been terrible here. We've been having 12. What's new? Yeah, it went very well. It went really well, as you say. The curse of uh, FrSky. And if you can see my sartorial elegance here, we had a bit of a fire on Saturday, which is a curse of over here having fires. And for the first time, one turned around on me, and in my desire to escape, I fell over, and yeah, it wasn't the best. I've emailed Ian. As if you just tell him that there's a new link, but I'm not sure why they can't get here. Some viewers have got here, and the new Phantom 4 released today is quite interesting. Oh, sorry, not the new Phantom 4. Here we go. There we are. We're back. We're back in a new place, and now it's just two of us. Sorry about that, Steve.
Oh, hey.
It's my uselessness.
Can we talk crap about Bruce while he's not listening?
We can talk. That's a perfect thing to do now. That is actually a perfect thing to do, is talk about Bruce while he's not listening.
He's much older than I thought he was.
Did they stay on that other link, or did they depart?
They all left. Yeah, so they were telling me that everyone's leaving, and so yeah, I feel really good. This is kind of like,
it makes it a bit easier.
I'm used to this. We have a podcast once a month, and it's always like 5 minutes before we're plugging things in, and we can't hear you, or we can't see you, and that type of thing. So
yeah, it's the power. I don't know why. I don't know what I did last. I got it to work last time, that I could join on the phone, and then keep it running on this, having joined again. But yeah, this time it ended it from the phone, and of course one needed to shut the phone down to stop the feedback.
So maybe I just very intimate conversation, just the two of us, looks like, right?
We can.
Yeah,
we can.
Yeah,
we can.
How you doing? Everything going well with you?
I'm doing well. I was just saying to the good people of Outside Land, best I send that link to them. I don't think I sent the new link.
You had your power shut off, and it was something about one of your reactors or something, power generators is down.
Oh no, it's bigger than that. It's we have constant. We have a really poorly run national utility, and the powers was last week. It was going off for 12 hours a day. This week we're doing 8 hours a day, and it's done in chunks through the country, so we don't all go off at once. We go off at designated times, and yeah, it's not the best. It disrupts schools, it disrupts workplaces, disrupts factories.
Does this go on all the time, or is this just something?
This year's been the worst year for it. I think we've had more than 100 days of it this year. I've sent it, Ian. The other Ian. I've sent it. Let me send it again. Here's Louis. See, Louis there. So
Louis, how you doing?
Now it's Louis. It's Louis' fault. It's Louis' fault.
Louis, where are you from?
I'm from Portugal.
Portugal. Okay.
And by the way, do you
like
the
firmware on this
that Ardu Pilot did for the FrSky radios?
What was that?
Haven't you ever seen what we did on Ardu Pilot to support the FrSky radios?
Oh,
Oh, we are live now.
Oh, we are live.
Yeah, we're
Oh.
live. Yeah.
Hey, I think we're all back. Look at this. Wow, we got the live button there.
Brilliant.
So I do have to apologize. I do have to apologize. I was rambling too long, and everyone got bored and hung up. And you know, it's. Just,
I think it's YouTube's boredom filter just kicks in by itself randomly.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's me and the buttons.
Anyway, what I was going to say is when I joined the company, what I wanted to do was get out and actually get the radio out in front of people, the new tandem line radios. And we'll talk about it more later, I'm sure. But the point is that I wanted to get out and get on the road and go see people. So for the last couple of months, that's what I've been doing. My job, I mean, how can I define my role in the company is to represent the company to the fixed wing community and the fixed wing community to the company, because they have a very big interest in what's going on in the fixed wing community. And they actually really do listen. And, you know, one thing right away, we should get to that whole thing about, you know, all the questions I'm sure everyone is dying to hear about is what happened between FrSky and those other two companies. And the one thing that they asked me is to not talk about the other two companies. So the years of 2017, 2018 to 2020, let's just say there was a big event and it changed the course of the company. But what I can talk about is, because it's one thing that kind of worried me as I was joining the company. I had a 90-day probation period, and I wanted to know, is this like a toxic company? Is this something where, you know, if I go out there, are people going to openly hate on the company? And can I move the company forward and put in my best effort? And so, you know, it turns out that, you know, there's actually a lot more support for the company than I thought there was. And very welcoming, and especially in communities where they haven't heard of FrSky or vaguely heard of FrSky. Also, you know, I went by myself to a drone event, and that was like, I was probably more scared to go talk to those guys than you guys. And everyone was using a little bit of everything there, and nobody particularly cared one way or the other about the radios or protocols and everything else. But, you know, I think I do kind of need to owe an explanation to the community what happened, what led up to before the event. Why did FrSky become a company that was beloved by so many, then all of a sudden was the object of ridicule and scorn? And I really, you know, it took me a long time to figure this out. And basically what it was that there was a void with the company. And that was a void between the company and the user base. And the best as I can figure out was that when the company started out many years ago, around 2000, they say 2010, but about 2012, it was, you know, they were starting to get recognized. But when the drone hobby picked up, the race quad hobby went off like gangbusters, FrSky was really the only radio in town for that. So they had the Taranis line of radios, 16 channels. By this point, it was just picked up and beloved. And, you know, the company was doing its very best to manufacture radios and get it out to the marketplace as quickly as possible, not really having a great relationship with the end user base. So when it's kind of like, hey, this is working out well and sales are going like gangbusters, you know, they were kind of sitting back and just kind of making sure that inventory was going out all the time and the product quality was there. I haven't really heard anyone say like, I got a radio in the year 2016 and man, was it horrible. Usually people really like the radios, and I'm starting to see like we still have, before the show, Bruce was saying that he had a radio from like the 2015 timeframe.
Well, I think it was well before that. It was one of the first batch that was sent to me to review. That was the radio, so it's going way back. I don't have it here, so I can't check, but the software would tell me. But I don't know that I agree with you, Steve, in terms of what changed the company's fortunes. I think the turning point was when you released Access. And also, remember, the radio came out a long time before drones. The radio was at 2012 or something, 2013, perhaps, or 2014. I was one of the first to fly a freestyle drone because I got set one for review. That was 2015. And at that stage, the Tyrannus was really, really popular amongst the fixed wing community because it offered a value, a price performance ratio that was unbeatable. Previously, we had Futaba and JR, and this FrSky radio, it was brilliant. It was everything everyone wanted at a really good price. And people bought into it. And then one of the things that kept it on top of the charts was the fact that there were D16 receivers from other manufacturers. That you could go to Banggood and buy a $14 receiver and $10 receiver if you wanted to. So people stayed in the FrSky family, ACCST, and then it looked as if FrSky decided we're losing too much money to these knockoff receiver manufacturers. We're going to go with a closed proprietary encrypted protocol called Access to lock out the rest of the market, the other receiver manufacturers, because in the first radios that came out with Access, they weren't backwards compatible with ACCST. They were Access only, and that meant that you couldn't use those cheap Banggood receivers. I think that soured the relationship with the community because people thought, oh gosh, they're trying to lock us in, and that's why people migrated away. And that's why, even today, with things like Radio Master, ACCST D16 is one of the most commonly used protocols.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, we're going way back now, right? I want to go back a little bit further than that. I want to go back to 72 megahertz, right? All the way back. And I know most of you guys started off with, well, was it 32 megahertz, 36 in other parts of the world?
We just call it long wire.
Oh, yeah, okay. the old crystals, right? The point is that I got a receiver from the 1970s, and I put a crystal in, because I did fly with 72 megahertz for a while, and it worked fine. And the original thinking was way back when we came out with these protocols is that 2.4 gigahertz is going to be 2.4 gigahertz, and that's all. You don't need to update firmware. It's going to be great forever. But if you look at everything that came along, it was at the time, you had not only us, but you had Futaba with their original protocols. You had DSM from Spectrum. So everybody had to update the protocols over time. And the one thing that I will say about Access is that it does exactly what people are asking for, which is it keeps a copy of the firmware that's on the receiver on the radio. And what we're working on now is having something like a tandem be able to go through the transmitter, find all the receivers, and say, you know what, these receivers are out of date. I'll put the firmware on the transmitter, and we'll help you get the receivers updated without having to disconnect it from. Yeah,
the OTA updating over the air. Yeah. The thing is, though, that even today, you can still buy D16 receivers. They haven't changed. That protocol has persisted way beyond Access. It's persisted beyond everything. It is still a very popular protocol, and that shows that you don't need to update. You don't need to have all this stuff going on. People just wanted a good, solid, basic protocol that the D16 ACCST offered, and that gave them the choice of receiver manufacturers. You're right about long wire days. There were only two standards originally. There was negative shift and positive shift, or whatever it was. You had JR versus Futaba. All the FM receivers were interchangeable until PCM came along. And then PCM locked you into a manufacturer. So a lot of people kept flying FM because they could buy a high-tech receiver and use it with the Futaba transmitter. And that was the great thing. It gave us the flexibility. We weren't locked in. And I think what happened was people got so accustomed to the freedom of FM that when FrSky came along, because remember, FrSky started by providing compatibility, a module you could put in the back of any transmitter, a Futaba module and a JR module, and that enabled, they worked with all radios. They brought that freedom to the PCM market. People that were using PCM radios, suddenly now they could just pick and mix. And then that's what made them strong. They gave the marketplace a choice. And then they took the choice away by going Access and trying to lock people back in. I think the reaction from the community was, we're not having it. We'll stick with ACCST and we'll get it from whoever's selling it, because now we've got the multi-protocol modules used in Radio Master and every other Chinese brand on the market, which support ACCST, D16 and the X protocols. They're all there. And so FrSky moved away from its roots, which was to provide radio users with choice, and the only choice was FrSky once they moved to Access. And as I originally, there was no backwards compatibility. They only introduced that because the market demanded it, and they were a bit late to the game with that. And I think it soured the product to a lot of users. I think John mentioned in the comments there, he agrees. They soured it to a lot of people, and it's hard to come back from that. And I also noticed that, as I say, it was the leading radio in the world, fixed wing and multi-rotor. The only thing that probably had a bit more market share was Spectrum, because they had all the marketing in place. You can't beat good marketing, even though it might be an inferior product. But I think what's happened is, from where I stand now, it looks as if FrSky has decided they don't want the bottom end of the market. They've got a whole range of new radios with fancy color LCDs and expensive radios. They're trying to move into the Jetty marketplace, the Jetty and the Futaba marketplace. And is that where the company's headed? Are they trying to say, well, we'll leave the bottom end to Radio Master and Jumper and all those people. We'll move up market where the profit margins may be a bit higher and lower volume but higher margin. Is that where the company's headed, or do they still see that bottom end of the market as being of value?
Wow, we just did the entire show in about one segment here. By the way, Bruce, tell me how you really feel.
I love, as I say, I love the FrSky stuff. I've got my Tyrannus, the original one. I still use it. I've got a QX7, which I still use, and I've got Jumpers and Radio Masters. But to be totally honest, like yesterday or the other day, I went out flying. I flew with my original Tyrannus and an L9R receiver. There's ELRS now these days, and there's all this stuff. But I flew with it because it just works. I just plug it in. I don't have to update anything. I don't have to make sure I'm on the latest version of anything. I just plug it in, and it works, and it's brilliant. And I'm never going to change the software because it's not broken. I'm not going to fix it, and that's the thing. I don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. You go today with. Go on in.
I was just going to say, for me, it was less about, because I remember stopping using the FrSky, and it was less about locking out third-party modules. It was all of the faff around you're buying in a module which has got a firmware which won't work, and it all became very messy. They introduced LBT, you had then access and all of this, and it got to the stage of, as a user, unless you were a heavily technical user, you're sitting there going, well, what's compatible with what? Where do I go? And I think a lot of people just got frustrated and moved on to other links, and I think that's what
I believe that it started even a bit before that, when they started with the differentiation of the firmwares on the receivers for European and non-European, so that you had to be extra careful on which models to buy and which receivers to buy, because they couldn't speak one to the other. It was there started the mess, because we had something that you would get a receiver from FrSky bought in England or bought in China, and it would always work. And
to be fair, though, that was forced on them, wasn't it? Because that's EU regulation. They couldn't avoid that.
But it's
probably the peak of the whole problem was the 900 megahertz gear. I have a bundle of 900 megahertz gear, and none of it talks to any of it. I've managed to get one receiver talking to one module. That's it, because all the versions are incompatible, and I just give up all the flashing and crap. It's just wasting my time. I go with the ELRS. It's much easier, and I stick with one version. That works fine. But that was such a disappointment, that the 900 megahertz stuff. I've got two modules, and they're different, and they were only bought a few months apart, because I thought I'll buy a new module. That didn't help. And the receivers, they're all just they just don't talk to each other.
Well, it's interesting, because at first there was a problem, and you probably got the first batch, right?
Yeah, I got the first one, and then there was a black one, and then I got a red one. And I mean, what was that thing in the UK that crashed? That plane that crashed flying the 900 megahertz, or that drone at the air show, that speeder or something, was it? What was that thing that they flew and they had FrSky? That was a very bad advertisement for FrSky.
Well, that's
900
megahertz. But that was a whole bundle of other issues and problems. That was a horrible thing.
Couple things here. First of all, when we're talking about ACCST version 1, ACCST version 2, the overall thinking in the company was, let's get everyone updated on ACCST version 2. And, one of the things I came in, I started talking to people, and they were telling me, like, I can't go into my planes and pull out all these receivers to update them. So if I'm going to do that, I might as well throw it away and put something else in there. So my point of view is, if someone is on ACCST version 1 and they're happy with ACCST version 1, let's make sure we have all the firmware for them. we do still have a lot of receivers on ACCST. They can be, when you get a receiver's brand new, they're going to be either ACCST version 2 or Access, but you can flash it back to ACCST version 1 if you need a new receiver. Thankfully, there's a lot of used receivers in the marketplace that use ACCST version 1. And, you know, all you need to do with the newest radio we have, like if you have this X20, on the back here, you can put a module on here. You could put an XJT module in the back, and you can flash that to ACCST version 1, and that transmitter will talk to everything, you know, that we have. That includes any other access transmitter as well. So you can still talk to all your ancient, and you know, that's the one thing that's great about FrSky, and it's also the one thing that sucks about FrSky, is that you have a bunch of really good hardware that lasts forever. And the problem is you have a lot of really old hardware that has lasted forever out there, and people want to be able to talk to it. And I understand if somebody invested in a X9D in 2014, they still want it to work. They still want the receivers to work. They don't want to, if they don't want to go forward, I'm not going to say you have to go forward. We can keep you in 2014 if you like. That's where you like to stay. So hopefully the other problem we're running into, and this one's kind of a bigger problem, I think, and I've seen this one come across the desk because I actually talk to people quite a bit in the, you know, when it comes to service, is that, and this is something that I know you're like, you know, we're trying to lock out people and everything else like that, but someone at this moment can go out and buy, well, there's not a competitor, but there's, you know, one company that I'm actually kind of fond of, and that's Emax. Emax, I think, makes very decent servos and very good motors, and I've appreciated the products over the years. You know, I've used them. I have them in my planes, but they do have on the box something that says anti-fake, and then you can go log onto a website and see if your servos are fake. Because what happens is sometimes people sell them in plastic bags, and they just, all they do is they put the label Emax on for like the $1 servos they get out of China, and it's not the same experience. And you know, I respect a company that wants to do that. However, they have this toy Whoop, which is known as the Tiny Hawk, and that has an X8 receiver in it, and built onto the motherboard. And so at this moment, you can buy that brand new, and you can buy a FrSky transmitter brand new, and they won't talk to each other. And when people get mad, they don't get mad at Emax, they get mad at FrSky. It's kind of like, hey, why isn't this talking to each other? And it's because this is, D8 has not been out in a decade, and this is a reverse engineered product that we're not getting any royalties from or anything else, but people expect service from it. So that's been, you know, one of the main issues of why these are part of the whole. I would say there's some problems with, you know, having legacy hardware, especially being a manufacturer that's been in the hobby for the last 10 years. But you know, the company does support all the end users who still want to work with the older technology, and we do have solutions. If you know, the solution I tell people is, if you want to work with this Tiny Hawk, you get yourself an XJT module or a multi-protocol module, and you can
one of those.
Yeah,
that's the problem, isn't it? There is some very stiff competition now for FrSky, especially at the bottom end of the market. I mean, you were saying you can put a module on the back of the X20 or whatever it is, and you can talk to all the products. Well, you can buy one of these and do the same thing without a module. It's basically
right.
the multi-protocol thing must have knocked the bottom end of the market or changed it quite significantly. And the fact that this supports D16 ACCST speaks to the longevity of that protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be around for a very long time, and we're going to keep selling it until there's no more demand for it. So, and as long as people keep buying the products, and you know, I'll make sure that if it's selling, why would we discontinue it? There's no point. But
can I ask a question? I've got my original Tyrannus.
Yes.
Now I can go and buy a black market, what's a grey market receiver, a D16 receiver, and bind it to my Tyrannus, right? We don't have to reflash it or anything. I can buy a receiver off the shelf these days from Banggood, bind it to my Tyrannus, works fine. can I buy a FrSky receiver without having to reflash that I can bind to my original Tyrannus with ACCST?
This is assuming you have ACCST version 1 on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would have to reflash.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I can't, backward support doesn't mean I have to do all the changes. I should be able to go and buy a product. That was the beauty of the ACCST system. You just bought a receiver and you bound it. You don't have to flash software. You don't have to mess around. And even today, I can buy a receiver that binds to my original Tyrannus. Why can't FrSky provide that level of backwards compatibility?
Yeah, that's something I was thinking about, because there's a lot of things. The thing that I discovered working for the company is sometimes I have problems sleeping at night and I wake up in the middle of the night. And the nice thing about having insomnia is that it's middle of the day in China. So I'm talking to the VP of sales and, I come up with an idea, and one of them was like a red radio, red X18. And the next thing I know, it's out. And I'm like, the special edition. So I've learned to kind of maybe take a few things and just kind of think of the ideas that I have and kind of limit them to some extent, and think them through before I present them. But one of them I'm thinking of is we really should have something like an X8R that's just flash with V1 protocol, ACCST V1, and you can with a big decal on it that says V1, and with a separate SKU for the people who want that. And
that's actually the thing, Steve. A lot of us, me and Bruce are technical people, but it was the faffing that put me off. Yeah, okay, I buy a receiver with the wrong protocol, then I've got to have an adapter to flash the receiver. I've got to connect it to the radio. There would be a lot of people if they could just go and buy the receiver, which was for their system. Right. Yes, it means more SKUs. Yes, it means them having to do that at their level, but it's something that caused a lot of people to walk away. Just all of the messing with protocols.
Okay.
Because if we look at Crossfire, take Crossfire, widely used protocol. Yes, there's multiple versions, but it does update itself to get it to where it needs to be. So if you buy a module, you buy a receiver, it'll sort itself out for the most part. ELRS is a bit more flaky on that now, in the sense of there are versions 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. And you need to be following that. But actually, as long as you're within the 1 times, 2 times, 3 times version, you're fine. And
I think Spectrum is probably the best example. It's DSM2, DSMX. That's as simple as that. There's nothing else to worry about. DSM2, DSMX. They've managed to do that over more time than FrSky have been making radios. How can they do it, but FrSky can't do it?
And then that's the thing that I look at is, what I do is kind of I guess right now I'm talking to kind of the thought leaders in the industry. And so these are the kind of things where I go back and say, it's one thing for me to say, I think this is a great idea, you should listen. But it's another thing to say, I was sitting down with these guys and this is the number one thing on their mind. And so maybe, a couple extra SKUs, let's come out with them. And if it doesn't sell, then, I've had those conversations with the company already where I've put myself we had servos and I wanted to say we didn't have enough of them. I said, let's airmail out some servos for us just so we can get them out and test them. And I'll put my name on them. This is a bad idea. This is Steve's fault. And next thing I know, it turned out to be a great idea. But this one seems like it's a pretty good idea as far as, this is something I can get behind. I'm listening to you guys. I will do what I can to go back and say, maybe one SKU. And what would it be? An X8R? Do you guys like that receiver?
Yeah, I mean, the D16 is still protocol is still, because you have it really tiny small. There's no real small X protocol receivers, or the XM, I suppose, in the XM2. Something like that. But I think I've got one question that will basically answer: has FrSky got a future in the hobby? How much is your ELRS based transmitter?
We have not released one yet, but we will be coming out with one.
Okay, so there are definitely plans to release an ELRS, not just a module, but an actual ELRS transmitter. Yeah, the thing is that it's going to be like a LoRa, and that's the thing. I don't have the information on it, but the best as I can tell is that it's going to be out of the box. It's going to be not a true ELRS, but it can flash to ELRS. That's the thing, though. People don't want something that's not a true ELRS. The whole idea of open source software is that it is it is what it is. It's not, because we've seen that's where FrSky, I think, has gone wrong by going closed. And if you're going to make a thing that's like ELRS, but it's not ELRS, then
it's not that. It's the like, for example, we have with our multi-protocol modules, there's a Lewis script that someone has developed. We don't ship that with the transmitter, but you can easily put it on there. And the idea is that, for whatever reason they do not feel that it's in their best interest to send out a transmitter that has the ability out of the box to work with other manufacturers' receivers.
Yeah,
so
I think that's the core, isn't it? I mean, that's what started the whole thing when they wanted to close the protocol to access, so they could lock out other manufacturers, because access locked other manufacturers out.
I don't think it's that. I think it's they don't want to get sued. That's,
sued by who?
Well, I mean, if you one of those other large manufacturers that hooks up to their receivers, if they can go and say, look, these guys are selling these transmitters and it's out of the box, it works with our receivers and we're mad and whatever else. That's, I think, the reason they do that. And so this ELRS is to be something where you will just have to flash the ELRS onto it. But if you're in the
there is going to be sorry, Steve, I was going to say there is going to be a problem with that, though, because as of now, the ExpressRS team will no longer be making targets for any hardware they haven't certified or checked over. Now, the reason for this is for quality. There's been some quality issues in the hardware. This was what happens sometimes with open source. For instance, there's been some manufacturers not follow the specification of the hardware that they've provided, and as such, what they're going to now do is only offer official targets via inspection first. It's not certified. Certified isn't the right term.
With the old Tyrannies and in the beginning.
Now,
OpenTX only worked with a small
certified
set of radios.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for you guys then. What, how big do you think the drone market is in the parts of the world you live in?
It's big. It's as big as it's going to get, I think. It's not going to get much bigger. We've reached peak drone. But the trouble is that the fixed wing side of things, I think, is dying more quickly than the drone side. The regulations are really hammering the hobby. I get so many emails from people saying, I'm hanging up my models, it's just too hard now. That's why I fight so passionately to try and get these regulations eased and to get some sense back into the hobby, because the hobby's growing out. Young people have come in with drones. But it's like everything, like skateboarding. It was a big boost and then it sort of fell away. There'll be a hardcore number that hang on, but we have seen the peak of the freestyle and racing drone era. And I think we should be making the whole thing more accessible to people at a reasonably low cost. I don't know, but it's probably, I'd say the trouble is the drone market has shifted to things like TBS Crossfire and even the multi-protocol modules. They want longer range. They don't want, the 2.4 is a bit limiting for a lot of people flying drones now. If you're flying proximity, you're going behind buildings and things. 2.4 just doesn't have the penetration. So they're going for 900 megahertz Crossfire and things like that.
We are forgetting one thing. There's a tiny minority of drones flying the ELRS, the Crossfires and all that, because the problem is the big gorilla in the room with the three-letter word that provides their own radios.
Yeah, but most people flying DJI FPV are flying with Crossfire or some other RF link. Some control link is not. They don't use the DJI control link because it's not solid enough.
The problem is the market is big, but the DJI took over the radios too. So should there be a place for an alternative radio for the DJI protocols? Perhaps, I don't know, but they are quite open with running Android on their top of the line radios, and allows you to run Android apps on their radios. So unless on very specific cases that you go either with Ardu Pilot and or PX4, there's a good way of expanding there, because the market of the iNavs, beta flights and all of that, that's a very small market compared with the larger market.
But what about other things like boats and cars and
Yeah, well, this is the thing I was going to come on to. You know, Steve, because obviously you got the Tandem series now, and look, the T20, the Tandem 20 looks a very interesting radio. However, I'm going to be blunt. I don't want FrSky's protocol. I have zero interest in your receivers or protocol. What I like is the radio. Now, what I would like to do is put an Express LRS module in the back of it.
Right.
There's a lot of people, you know, I've heard very good things about the handset. You know, I have some dealers I deal with a lot who are using them now exclusively on their bigger aircraft builds. The quality of the radio is good, but I don't want the protocol. You know, I'm pretty much Express LRS on everything now, and I probably will be forever. So is there any plans to bring Crossfire support via the module bay for those radios?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's the next thing is going to be Crossfire and ELRS support for the X20, the Tandem line, and also more Tandem. So yeah, there's that is. I'm surprised it's not out already. I did see about 2 weeks ago somebody posted a video of him flying with Crossfire in the back of a Tandem radio.
Yeah.
So the firmware's coming out, and so yeah, that's going to do that. And that was before I even started the company. That was part of the plan. We're going to work with everything. So, you know, if you do not want to use our receivers for some reason, you can still have a really nice transmitter, and you can work with whatever receiver systems you feel like working with.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's where the problem was, actually. Sorry, Louis, just to think. And I think that's where they went wrong. And I don't want to go back over that bit too much, but it became
go over that bit more.
No. But it became radio and protocol hand in hand, if you know what I mean.
I believe FrSky should focus on what they are good at. That is building good and inexpensive hardware that is reliable and solid. Because I'm still having my Tyrannis. I won't sell my Tyrannis.
That's the thing.
Although
That's
I have a bunch of
testament,
other radios.
Yeah.
We've all still got them.
Yeah.
We've all still got them.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
That's great.
That's the problem from FrSky's point of view.
I think that their major strength is good hardware that is reliable, and you could basically flash anything you would want on the radio and make it work perfectly. It had a solid, like Bruce said, it had a solid radio link that would work 99.9% of the time. So bring us that, and you'll see coming up
stuff. Yeah, fantastic.
So go on the hardware. It's where you guys are good at.
See,
and embrace open source software.
Yeah. Well, okay. So for the firmware, for OpenTX and things like that. Okay, I hear you. We do still sell radios that have OpenTX on them. And we are coming out with more radios that have OpenTX on them, so it's not dead. I
mean, OpenTX and the other derivative now, Edge, right?
Edge TX.
Yeah. That's the one thing that's beautiful about the situation at the moment. I can buy one of these radios, and then I can go and buy a different brand. And if FrSky still had, you know, if their flagship models had OpenTX or EdgeTX or whatever, I could be more inclined to buy it because I don't have to relearn an interface. Doesn't matter how good a new interface is, you've still got to learn it and go through things. And so being able to just transfer my skills from one radio to another has made a huge difference. It's made lots more radios more sellable. Because remember, I went from Futaba to JR. It was a nightmare back in the old long days.
No, Bruce. That's because we're all old.
Okay.
Some more old.
Speak for yourself, Louis.
I wanted to get to something here, which is wanted to contrast the drone industry or the drone radios that you have right now versus what you have at the flying fields, right? So the one thing I'd say about the drone industry in the United States is that when I've gone around, I've gone to not one, if I heard it one or two times, it would be like, oh, that's just strange. And then I wouldn't think much of it, but it's pretty much everywhere I go, which is if a hobby store or, you know, someone that's a mail order business has dabbled in drones, they're out of them now. You know, they do not want to sell drones anymore because one thing you look at, I can tell you what, I mean, I watched a great review today from Ian on that. It was the new Jumper T12 or which, no, it was one of the game style Jumper.
You're muted.
You're muted in. What you mean? One of these things?
No, that's fine. He doesn't.
Yeah, it would have been
the little.
Yeah, which was the
Commando
Jumper
or something.
Truck, which it would have been the Commando 8, the Jumper.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much does that sell for?
That one I think is about 90 quid off the top of my head. Or wait, one of them is more expensive than the other because you've got the Commando 8, which is like 110. Did I say it was a bit expensive? Because there's one of them which is a bit expensive and one of them is quite good, if you know what I mean. I can't remember which one's which.
Okay, because when I go in and I talk to all the shop owners and I talk to all the mail order guys and all these things, the people who are at the actual stores, the thing that they always talk about is how much margin they're making. And the problem is when those radios, and this is something I think that's turned a lot of people off to the whole industry in drones in the United States, is that, you know, when they sell one of those radios, there's $20 profit in it for the company. And because it's so small that, you know, if someone comes back with a question or a problem or has to return it, they're at a loss. And so
was that the one I couldn't take apart, Steve? Was that the one I said I wasn't going to take it apart because it felt like I was going to break it? Because there's one of them which is completely sealed.
It was the one that you were complaining
I did take that.
It didn't have a lanyard.
Yeah. It doesn't have a lanyard. Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah. So that was it. But I mean, the truth is that the drone market right now, in the United States or probably all over the world, has a lot of really good options for under $200, under $150. You know, there are a lot of very compelling options out there. I mean, if you're new, starting off in the hobby, you want to fly a drone, you can get yourself some damn good equipment for under $150, right?
Yeah. And look, Radio Master is, look, I'll name the company, they're FrSky's biggest problem right now. There's a lot of radios out there. There's a lot of companies, but Radio Master has been the one that almost feels like they took the gap FrSky was in, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? FrSky had created their little world.
Almost if they took part of the company from FrSky, moved it over to Radio Master, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it felt very much like they carried on where they left off.
Okay.
Yeah, they took up that. The thing is that annoys me with this end is like every day Radio Master brings out a new radio. It's like we're looking for. People have realised that the market is now saturated with radios. Everyone that wanted a radio has got a radio. So what do you do after that? And I can see FrSky's predicament because they were making money selling receivers. You buy one radio, but every couple of weeks you're buying another receiver because you've broken one or you've built a new model or something. And so that's the revenue stream. It's the receivers and all those other bits and pieces. You sell a radio once, but you sell receivers every. You know, the volume of receivers is much greater. So that's probably why, speaking as businessman, why I can see the sense in FrSky saying, well, we're going to lock out these third-party receivers because they're killing our revenue streams. So we'll lock them out. We'll put access in at proprietary. No one can copy it without risking, you know, legal ramifications or without, you know, right technology. So we'll do that. Lock people into us. That'll assure our revenue stream from receivers. So we're set. You know, Radio Master can't do that. So they're forced to release a new radio every week so that people think, oh, I want a new radio. FrSky is now moved up market because, as Steve says,
the thing is, on the up market, I don't see FrSky coming up as a competitor, for instance, of those Earlink and those big radios that are used on the upper end of the radio control market for professional drones. I don't see
fixed wing.
An FrSky there. I see the Earlinks and a bunch of other Chinese.
Yeah, the problem is it's not. I think where they'll position themselves, as Steve says, is at the top end of the fixed wing market with jet pilots and things like that. And we have a lot of jet flyers here, and I've said to them, why don't you fly the new FrSky gear? And they just laugh as they pick up their $3,000 jetty radio or their $3,000 some German radio. It's going to be very hard for FrSky to break into that, isn't it?
So I can talk all about that because that's what I've been working on the last 60 days. Those people, right? And so, there's, when you look at the market, there is really two different markets. The drone market is pretty well served. There's a new brand out a new radio, as you're saying, every other day, right? And, you know, there's something there you like. Let's be honest. When you look at OpenTX and you look at EdgeTX and everything else like that on a drone, what are you doing with the drone? You're telling it to assign motors, you're telling it to assign switches, and then Betaflight or iNav takes care of the rest of it, right? And so that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what's going on. When you're flying fixed wing, you know, you can take your favorite formula of radio. You can take your best radio. You can put Crossfire on there. You can put ELRS, whatever else. You take out the flying field and you show it to the guys and say, this is the best. This is what you guys should be flying. and they'll just look at you and smile and walk away. They don't care. They don't care if they have to spend 4 times more for the receiver. They don't want to mess with OpenTX or open source firmware. And that is the problem. At best, they ever did the flying fields. Now, I mean, back in the day, back in 2012, when, you know, this was, our modules first came out, yeah, I'm sure we had a lot of market share. But right now, I mean, the market is essentially, in the United States, dominated by Spectrum. But the thing is, with Spectrum, they're looking for alternatives. It's just people right now, to get yourself a simple, was it the NX6, I believe, is $400, and the NX8 is $500.
Yeah, that's just the stupidity tax they put on them for people that are silly enough to buy into the whole thing. I mean, Spectrum puts this huge margin on, and they got lots of special marketing, but the product is pretty average. And I think our fields must be different to yours, though, Steve, because around here, if you go out to our club, everybody is flying a jumper or a Radio Master, fixed wing.
So,
all the fixed wing flyers, Radio Masters, jumpers.
As well. And isn't that
Foamy,
a niche
the
within a
foamy.
niche?
Come on, Bruce.
If the
It's
drone
the
market,
foamy,
if,
No. We're talking about gas models. We're talking about nitro models. We're talking about gliders, the whole gambit, because they just deliver the same price performance value that the Tyrannus delivered when it was launched.
But that is not the market for the Jetty radios and such.
No, the Jetty is up market. That's where you're looking at the guys who are spending $20,000 on their models. So, $3,000 on a radio is nothing. But there are not that many of those people. And we have jet meetings in the whole of New Zealand. We get like 20 people turn up. So it's 20 people in the whole New Zealand buying that radio, that level of radio. So you're not going to sell a lot of them. So you have to have very high margins, high prices. But these people are importing radios, $3,000 or $4,000 radios for their jets. And when you suggest FrSky to them, doesn't matter how good a quality FrSky is, they're going to say, no, I'll buy my German radio. My German radio is German, BMW, Mercedes, German. There's that perceived thing. And in fact, originally when I spoke to FrSky many, many years ago, I said, because FrSky, for those who don't know, was originally called FrSky. There was an I in it, FrSky. I said, you do realize what that means, don't you? I said, it's perhaps not the best name for anything in the European markets, or the English-speaking markets. So then they went FrSky, and I think they thought it was going to say FreeSky. FRI was free, but no, it wasn't. It was FrSky. But I said, you should look at changing your branding, I believe, to a more European name, something that can people identify with. Look what Huawei's done, and a lot of Chinese companies have developed these European-sounding branding, and it gives them a bit of cachet in the marketplace. And I think that if FrSky had done that, they might be in a better position to compete with the jetties and things of the world now. But it is a difficult position, isn't it, Steve, to be in where you are now?
The thing is, I'm in a completely different market than you guys are, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to go out to the field, because I had to see for myself what are people really using. And I was at the Club Flying Fields, I think out of probably 20 days at the Club Flying Fields, I saw maybe one Radio Master the whole time. I did see a few FrSky radios, but the vast majority of them were Spectrum. Yeah. And then there are some people. That's America.
That's an American. That's an American thing.
The high-end radios. That's if you're thinking that the drone market is small, then I'm afraid AMA, BMFA, and other sort of established flying fields are an even smaller market than the drone market. If you wanted to put in the thing, there's way more people out there flying FPV.
I think the other
leaves me cold.
But the other thing too, though, Gary, is that the FPV community, the drone community, they're more amenable to adopting new technology. They're always adopting new technology because there's benefits to them in that. New version of flight controllers, new versions of ESCs and motors and things. Whereas the fixed wing community, they tend to buy a radio and sit on it for 10 years.
Yeah. So I'll give you some practical experience. I'm not going to sit here and exaggerate and tell stories and whatever else. I'll tell you exactly what happened. So because, I went out at the flying field, exactly what I told you before, which is the vast majority was Spectrum. And then there's, a pretty good sizable, I would say it's probably 60% Spectrum, probably 35% Futaba, and the rest, the 15%, is Jetty. Right. And that's good because Jetty had nothing of, they've been in the market in the United States for about 12 years. And so that's kind of what I saw. And then, what I was told was kind of the same thing that Bruce was telling us right now, which was, people are stuck in their ways. They're not going to want to get new radio systems. They're not looking for alternatives. This is, you know, it's going to be a very hard sell. So the first time I went out, I went to Wisconsin, and I remembered I called up the club field president. I was telling him, like, listen, I'm coming out and I'm by myself because my coworker left. We were at IRCHA, and he decided to get off at O'Hare and come back home. And I went to Wisconsin by myself. And he's like, listen, you come to Wisconsin, you're never alone. You're always among friends. And I get out there in the club field, and I'm sitting there for like the first hour, and no one's walking by. No one's looking at the radios. No one really cares. And then a couple people come by, just kind of like, who is this guy? Why is he here? And then they come by, look at the radios. And they disappear, and they go in their tents. And then all of a sudden, people started coming out of the tents to look at the radios. And they were kind of like, wow, I got to see this, because I can't believe what you just told me. And, you know, is this true? So the problem I had in Wisconsin is I had nobody to sell the radios. I didn't have a supplier. But by the time I got to Texas, it was a different story. I had suppliers down there. And you think Texas is a little bit more of would be more closed-minded. It's the South. It would be, these are people that don't trust outsiders very much type of place. What
worries me is they carry guns.
Oh yeah, they carry guns. They don't piss these people off, man. That's for sure. You know, the point is that they're so damn frustrated with Spectrum that they're looking for an alternative. And that's why I think that the radio system makes perfect sense right now, is because if they can't afford Futaba, they certainly can't afford Jetty. And, you know, if this does work as well as I heard it works, yeah, I'll buy the transmitter, I'll buy the receivers. I'm not going to sit there and listen to ELRS. And a lot of times the guys came up, every once in a while, someone will come up and say, oh, FrSky. Okay. I don't want to talk to you. That's open source. And I'm like, no. This is actually a closed source operating system I have on this radio. Oh, okay. And then they kind of will stop and listen, but they're just kind of really turned off the community as to open source anything.
I think you've
I've got a question. What's the average age of these people?
The average age of these people, I would say most of them are probably the ones who ended up buying the radios. I'd say most of them were probably late 50s upwards.
If you compare that to the drone community is a much younger community, generally speaking. There's old people like me, but I'm an exception. Most of you were looking at, you know, people in their 20s, 30s, a lot of them. And I think FrSky would have to decide, do you want to attach your wagon to old people that are growing out or a young community that's coming into it? And that's, I think, why the young people are also more embracing the change. That, you know, old people like me, we don't like change. That's why I use my Tyrannus radio. But I think you've got to look at where the market's changing. We've seen the hobby graying out for quite some time. It's continuing to gray out, except for the areas like freestyle drones, which are bringing in new people, and those new people are buying stuff. So do you do the market planning for FrSky? Do you actually sit down and do the marketing plans and work out where you're going to be focusing your efforts and where your products are going to be focused, or are you sort of further down the food chain?
So we have a very wonderful woman in our corporate office who takes care of all the marketing, and we actually have someone else who works in the marketing department with her, and they do all the planning and everything else. But she is like, when I have ideas, she listens to it. And as far as, you know, how I plan to implement rollout in the United States, the tandem radio line, I'm the guy who pretty much decides what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting because the thing that lost the community heart, or that lost the FrSky love that was out there, was a failure to listen to the community. And I know you've got a good connection to your part of the community, and I've probably got a good connection to my part, and we all have a good connection to our parts. What are you doing to have an overall view? Because it's very easy to be sort of dealing with a small group of people and think that represents the hobby. I know I do it, and I make the mistake, and I try very hard not to, but everybody does it. So where do you get your other inputs outside of your fixed wing up end of the marketplace? Where do you get the feedback from people who are flying drones, the people who are flying foamies? Are you making assumptions, or do you actually have communications with those marketplaces?
So we do have communications with the marketplaces. The drone community, the company kind of wants to know if the relationship with the drone community is toxic. And what I'm starting to come to the realization is, no, it's not really toxic. There's just a few loudmouths online who say, I speak for the whole community. Yeah. Okay. So Bruce, I need to, let me slap you a little bit and listen. I mean, seriously, you know, no, what we want to do is work with the drone community. I don't know. It's an interesting market. It's one of those things that we do still have hardware that works with that market. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of products coming out, not a lot like Radio Master, a lot of products, but just products for the drone market, and we'll see how it goes. We do. Two of the guys on my team are specialized in drones. They have a very good relationship with the drone community, and I think right now it's time. A couple of years ago, it was not time to go out and talk to the drone community unless you wanted to get cussed out. But now it's kind of like, I think the drama, a lot of it is behind us for the most part. People have picked their brands. And the one thing I've heard over and over again from people is like when they say, well, I would never buy another FrSky product as long as I live. But they make really good hardware. And if it was a story that went like, I would never buy another FrSky product as long as I live and the hardware sucks, then we don't have much to talk about. But it's kind of like they make good hardware. And that to me is kind of like an opening, because if you like the hardware, I think there's always some place for us to go in the drone community.
But can't you see where that's coming from? People like the hardware. You make really good hardware. No one disputes that. But you have this aversion to you want your proprietary operating system on your transmitter. And you're saying ELRS, will you be able to upgrade to that or change to that? Can't you see the benefit of embracing these open standards? OpenTX EdgeTech is the single most popular piece of transmitter software on the market. ELRS is rapidly becoming the standard for radio links. If FrSky took their fantastically good quality hardware and embraced those standards, don't you think that would be a really good win-win for everybody?
Yeah, I think what I'm looking at right now, the ELRS in particular, is that there's a lot of second-rate hardware available, especially for receivers. And that would be... that's something that we need to look at. How can we get hardware? And up to this point, what people have been doing is they've been taking the XM Plus and they've been flashing that for 2.4 gigahertz, and they've been taking R9M modules, putting ELRS on that, and they've been using 900 megahertz receivers and flashing ELRS on that. But I think part of the other problem is that ELRS is changing so quickly and so much over the last in the last year in particular. It's hard to come out with something because usually I have to plan something 6 months.
But Steve, the hardware hasn't changed. That's the thing.
That's it. It's not FrSky's problem. It wouldn't be FrSky's problem.
Be their issue. The software
let's up the thing. With all the good hardware that FrSky knows how to do, how do you see coming up with radios that will fight against the video transmission and control links? So basically going against the DJI digital war that is going on. So having a radio that has video capabilities and transmitters that also have video capabilities.
Well, we're coming out with on the X20S, we're coming out with one that has built-in HD0. So the monitor on there. Yeah.
Can I interrupt? Why would digital or FPV technology is changing more rapidly than radio technology? Why would you build in a relatively fixed standard into something that should be dynamic? Because we've already seen how in the last few months how digital FPV has gone on. We've got the Cadex Avatar, we've got DJI version 3 coming out, or the Air Unit 3. These things are changing quickly, and I think HD0 is reaching the end of its hardware life. Why would you build in something that is not going to be easily changed into something that you want to keep current?
I think what it is they put it out there. Me personally, I would rather us focus on things that are just for the fixed wing community, that people would, I would rather take the time and put it in something else other than this. But, it's kind of like they have innovation and they're always willing to try something else. And that's what's great about it. I mean, I can see it. I the problem is with that whole community, because we do have a monthly show, Wing Talk, where we had Leon from Painless 360, and he went through, even though he was sick, he went through and he went, these are all the new protocols, these are all the new video systems coming out, these are great, and this is this, and this is that, and this is great, and this is better, this is worse. And I'm sitting there with, I'm like, I'm an analog guy, and I cool, I dig it, I guess. My analog stuff, I got plenty of it, and it seems to work fine for me. So to some extent,
yeah, but you could, hey Steve, I could spin that on why did they change the protocol. That's the same argument. I've got a protocol, it works fine for me, why do I change it? That's that same argument though, isn't it? It's just on the other side of the coin now.
Right. I happen to like Access. I mean, as far as this is all Access receivers, they do share back the firmware that's on the receiver back to the transmitter, so it's always stored. And that was the number one. I mean, if there was one complaint, if I can hear one complaint people had about the system, was like, I had no idea what version of firmware I had on my transmitter, and I don't know what's on my receiver. I don't know how they talk to each other. Now you do.
I think one of the other aspects is that we know that companies come and go, and like look at JR, they were a big name in the hobby, and now where are they? Even the biggest companies can basically disappear. With ACCST, we as users had the knowledge that we'll always be able to get receivers because there are a myriad of manufacturers. So even if FrSky disappears, my Tyrannus will still be able to get new receivers. If you're going Access, what if FrSky disappears? Where do I get my receivers? What happened to my existing investment in transmitter and stuff if I don't have access to receivers from a third party? This third party supply is actually a huge asset to a company if they use it properly. Yeah, it can compromise some of the revenue streams, but you use that to boost other revenue streams by saying where you've got the guaranteed continuation of supply and so forth. But if you want the best of these receivers, you come to us, because we're always just making a better quality product. Focus on the strengths, which is the quality of the hardware. And when we're talking about drones, you've got to realize there are different. There's not just a drone market. There is freestyle drones. There is Louis drones, which are like the camera drones and things, which have a totally different RF and FPV or video requirement to the sort of freestyle drones we're used to seeing in a lot of YouTube videos. So it's very hard to make a product, but you make it sound almost as if that you got walking away from the multi-rotor market, shall we call it? And I don't know that that's really good. I think the problem that I have with most of the FrSky transmitters and drones is just that they're too big and too cumbersome. I don't want an X10 or whatever it is with a great big color screen and all the knobs and levers to break off. I want something like Crossfire, which I can throw in a backpack. I don't have to worry about anything getting broken. I don't have to carry a case with it. That's where I think the X Lite, even the X Lite, it's still a bit, the switches poke out, and you look at the Crossfire, there's no switches poke out. Sorry, the Tango, there's nothing pokes out. The sticks fold down. You can just throw it in a bag, not have to worry about it. That was a brilliant piece of design engineering by Team Black Sheep. That's why so many people flying freestyle drones still fly Crossfire with the Tango too.
I don't think that the FrSky is walking away from the drone market. It's just kind of what happened was that there was, unfortunately, an implosion with the drone market a few years back. And what happened since then is you have a company now that this is the kind of thing where either you get closer to the customers or you're gone. And the company genuinely, I mean, to the point where if I happen to mention, like, I'm talking to an end user about something, like they'll by name, they'll mention, like, you talk to this guy, what did he have to say? They really do want to listen. They do want to. And then the other thing is that when I go out and talk to people, I fill them in on everything as far as this is what's going on in the marketplace. So even with our conversations today, what I'm hearing from you is you want to have ACCST version 1 on a receiver ready to buy, right? That was the one thing you want to have. And you would like to have ELRS on one of our quality receivers so that people can have a quality receiver to buy, correct?
Yeah, I think the thing, to be totally honest, I mean, I still have a soft spot for FrSky. I love all my FrSky transmitters, my QX7 with and my Tyrannus. I love them and I use them regularly, and I've never been disappointed by them. I've got a lot of radios like this, but these are made to a price. You have to admit that they are not the same quality as a FrSky. And the thing is, we keep having to buy new ones because new ones come out. If FrSky brought out something that was functionally the equivalent of, for example, the TBS Crossfire, and if it embraced embraced open standards, so I knew that there was always going to be support for it. All I wanted is the hardware, and if I want to reflash or something else, let me do that. Just give me the hardware that's embraced by use open standards, so ELRS for the RF link and OpenTX or EdgeTX for the firmware inside. I'd buy that in a heartbeat, because I would like something that's better quality than this, something that I can totally rely on and feel confident all the time. And that would be a win for me. I'd actually pay my own money to buy that, even if it was twice the price, because I look at my Tyrannus, it's lasted me over a decade easily, well over, is it a decade? I don't know, long time, longer than I care to remember. And I'd love that kind. I know this won't last as long. It won't last as long. It's just not made to the same level of quality. So there are people like me who will pay good money for a good radio. I mean, look, people pay good money for crap radios. They're by Spectrum. So people will pay good money for a good radio. But FrSky's not offering us that option, I don't think, in this end of the market.
Can I jump in and say that also, I think you've landed in an area, and the people in our chat, our community are the sort of people that are going to fiddle and faddle with things, and some of them are manufacturers of drone systems, and like this Tyrannus did come with a drone system that was sent for me to review. So you might be actually getting into a marketplace where the end user creates his Lua scripts or whatever in his open source way on that radio for his particular brand of drone, and you might sell 100, 200, 1,000 units of whatever it is ship with whatever that airframe is. I think you need to be dragged into the world of open source a little bit gently, calmly.
The problem is like, I don't know how we lost the narrative. I mean, when you look at EdgeTX, about 95% of it was written by its OpenTX, and about probably a good portion of OpenTX, all the cool things you love about it so much, was funded by all the other hobbyists from the past who bought the Tyrannus radios and all the receivers, because we helped pay for someone to help sit down and write the code. Now, if you really want to know the problem with the industry, and this is, if you want to talk about OpenTX and EdgeTX and how things are going to change, and the problem is like, I know this pretty damn intimately because I've been my involvement with INAV, and that is these open source communities are not funded very well. So when you look at something like this, I mean, we haven't really talked about this radio, but essentially what this is rewritten OpenTX. This is OpenTX written from the ground up to take advantage of the microcontrollers that are inside, that are much more sophisticated now than the ones that you had in your radio from 2013. And because of that, I mean, it's a hell of an investment to do that. That's a couple years worth of work. And at some point, someone's going to come along and say, man, I want that, but I want that on my Radio Master. I want it on my jumper. I want it on my cross TBS thing, whatever else it is. And you're going to, it's just to do that, to sit there and update the firmware is very expensive. And the problem is that it's being done on nights and weekends, because what's happening right now is that the people who write this code have full-time jobs that work in the daytime. So in their free time, they're writing the code. It's the same problem we had with INAV. It's just basically, if you could find a good source of revenue to help fund these people, to the extent that, I mean, they are funded by some of the radio manufacturers right now, but not really enough. And the other problem is that you have now, instead of it was supposed to be OpenTX, was supposed to be the container for all of this open sourceness, and then all of a sudden it moved over to EdgeTX and FreedomTX. So now you have a diversion, and so some money's going over here, some money's going over there, and that's kind of
no, but that's good for you, Steve, because you still supply the radios, because your specialty is the hardware. So the more open sourced firmwares, the better. Put the information out there. You provide the radios with a closed source firmware that you can go to the traditional customers and sell that radio with that closed source firmware, but allow people to put open source, OpenTX, EdgeTX, whatever TX that people want.
Right.
Go back to the basics.
So you're saying to take this radio and allow it to have OpenTX on here, or EdgeTX, or one of those other operating systems?
Yep.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but further than that, isn't it interesting? Okay, so because I actually think the Tandem the X20 looks a very interesting radio, and actually I like the HD0 version you guys have got coming. You've just released the HD0 monitor as well, which has got a lot of people excited. There is a large amount of people who are watching FrSky on this stuff, because there are those of us who do like HD0. It has a place in the market. It's growing. It's going to improve. There's new stuff around the corner.
Right.
But here's an interesting question. Okay, so you've said the software is based off OpenTX.
Right.
Can I then export all of my models from OpenTX and bring them in to the Tandem via a configurator, so I can migrate from my OpenTX radio tomorrow onto a Tandem?
So right now the answer is no.
Okay.
But
Because that's one big problem they need to get on top of ASAP.
And as an OpenTX user,
Yeah.
can I pick up that radio and program it without having to spend hours and hours learning new stuff?
it's the OpenTX users pretty much have a pretty easy time with the radio. One thing that's missing is the input tab. So it is, you'll find it easier to work with this. It would probably take you if I gave it to you, you probably in an evening you'd figure out how to work it and get everything going. Now, to answer your question about the models being able to take OpenTX, right, and everything.
Yeah.
What's happening is that the process of getting up to the standard is OpenTX, right? Where OpenTX is at right now. The last version was in May, I believe, OpenTX.
Yeah, it was, but it's long awaited, and even that was a pretty poor update in the sense of what people have been waiting for. But yeah, it was about May time, wasn't it? So,
right. So what's going to happen is that I actually got the radio. I was actually one of the first people to get the radio. And when I first got it, I literally took it out of the case, played with the FrSky, moved around. I could hit the touch screen. It worked. The gimbals felt good. I zipped it up, put it in the case, didn't touch it for 6 months. It was just, I couldn't use it. It was not ready. But when I went through and updated the firmware on it, and that was to update the firmware and get the radio up to date, was probably a couple hours worth of work. It was getting files from GitHub and this location and that location and putting it on. It was a real nightmare. The thing where I said, oh my gosh, this is a game changer, is when I was able to use something called Ethos Suite, which is you plug it into the transmitter, into your computer. It says, oh my gosh, you have an X20S plugged in. I am so happy you have that plugged in. Let me take a look at it. You know what? Your firmware is out of date. Your SD card's out of date. Your bootloader's out of date. Would you like me to update it? Yes. All right, go out in the kitchen, grab yourself a Coke, and come back in 5 minutes. We'll be done. And you come back in. Oh my gosh, it's done. This thing's up to date. I don't have to sit here. Don't have to worry about putting the wrong version of the firmware on the radio or anything else like that. It's all taken care of. It was seamless, and that was amazing. And so that one thing that it's going to do. But I was saying before is that the standard is OpenTX, and we've been working on getting to that level where it's where it's at right now, the May version of OpenTX, and that is going to take a while longer because the guy who's writing the code is very meticulous, and he wants to make sure he does an excellent job. And the thing is, the radio is wonderful. It has not hit critical mass yet. What I was going to tell you is that, when I go to the markets, all these different places I went to, and I was showing the radio off, and I remembered in particular, as I was driving out, I stopped off in Tucson, and I talked to somebody, and he said, yeah, when you come back through town, if you have one of those X20s in blue, X20s in blue, I'll take it. And I said, okay, I think I'll have them because I think I have more than enough radios. And I was gone for 2 weekends, right? And by the end of the Friday, so it was 2 days in, I'm calling my company and I'm like, you got to send me more radios. I'm almost out. And I mean, people are literally buying these radios. And I know that sounds strange. Like people are making major decisions about buying a radio. Typically, when you buy a radio system, that is something you sit there and you think about. No, people are so starved for something like this that they actually we sold in a course of 2 weekends about 17 radios, which is pretty outstanding if you think about the number of people that updated to it. So I think that it really is, there's the markets there. I do think that there's going to be even more. The problem that you're really start to run into is starting next year is that when you finally hit that standard, that threshold, the thing that you have to worry about is that after that threshold is the possibility that new stuff could come out that this radio could take advantage of because it has a stronger microcontroller that we're not able to do with OpenTX or EdgeTX or any of those other things. So that might be something where you will start seeing things where people are going to start saying, you know, kind of like, hey, I like how that works. Could I get that on my Radio Master or whatever, this or that? And then
so what does this extra power give it? What benefits to the user is this more powerful microcontroller? How's that going to benefit the flying experience?
Like, for example, the one thing I was thinking of was when there should be a Lua script or something where you make it nearly idiot-proof to update the firmware in your receiver. And so, you know, something where the screen pops up and says, hey, this is how you do it. And here's all the instructions. And the other thing is how
that's not based on processor power. You can do that with any processor. It's just a case of having the memory and the, you know.
Right. A lot of those microcontrollers don't have a lot of memory. So the code was written very tightly for those smaller amounts of memory.
Yeah, that's the case of the old ones.
That's kind of where these things have a lot more extra memory available for it to store that. And it's just, you know, what I'm hoping for is that, you know, I do like the fact that we didn't turn this into OpenTX version 2, where it's kind of the confusing, everything's everywhere kind of menuing system, but there's just more of it for little things. I mean, I think OpenTX is fantastic. EdgeTX is fantastic because it's based on OpenTX. What it can do is phenomenal. I don't think most people understand what that radio you have, Bruce, from 2014 is capable of doing. And if you were to update it, it could do even more. But
it does. But why, I don't need it to do more. It does everything I want. That's the biggest problem. You made such a damn good product. Nobody wants to buy a new one because the one they got still works. That is a perennial problem when you make really good stuff. It's hard for quality manufacturers to live long term because their stuff just keeps working, and the FrSky's fallen into that trap. Hello.
Reading this note. Yeah, someone was talking about one of the topics we can't talk about, so it's just but yeah, what I'm looking at is the company is okay, this radio system. What I will say is this: when you look at it, what I do is I show it to people, and the first thing I do is I tell them, hold on to this. You know, I don't want to talk about anything about the radio. I'm not going to sit there and talk about just dump all the features on them. It's just hold it. Move the gimbals. What do you think? Okay, it feels like it has heft. They always say it's hefty, a little bit heavy. Oh yeah, this is nice, and you know, this is better than I thought it would be. And then they're like, "How much is it?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll get to that in a second." And then they go in and I start showing them it has a touch screen. It's dual band. What does that mean? Well, it's 2.4 gigahertz and 900 megahertz. Bruce, I hate to break it to you, our 900 megahertz works great. Fantastic. I actually fly 900 megahertz with my systems with the R9M module because I updated these things, and I'll fly these things, my planes a mile away with them. They work fantastic.
Yeah. That doesn't help the people who are stuck with all these incompatible bits from a while ago. But interesting enough, now one thing why doesn't FrSky make their own proprietary operating system and all their proprietary stuff, and then offer what you would call a bones version, just the hardware? So you can take this hardware, publish the specs so that the software developers can port their software to it, their OpenTX, their EdgeTX, all this other stuff, and sell the hardware alone, because it doesn't matter how good FrSky makes its software. Just look at DJI. They have the best digital FPV system on the planet, yet people have had to hack it to put in the functionality they want with the full OSD and things. DJI wouldn't do it. They didn't want to do it. But the community has invested all the time and effort to reverse engineer this and provide the functionality that was missing. But if FrSky produces a platform which has all the necessary documentation published, then people will run to it and they'll start developing it in a way that your paid developer never could even come close to achieving, because you have a team of dozens, if not more people, all working in every hour they've got to make this thing work like the best way it can. And I've always said to the Chinese manufacturers, Make the hardware. It's what you're good at. Software, I've seen a lot of really bad Chinese software, and the fact that the radio isn't yet ready for the big time means that FrSky themselves are still working on the software. There's still work to be done. Throw it out to the community and just see what happens.
So you want us to publish the specs of our hardware?
Yeah, the interface, what you need to write software to make run on it. That's what you mean basically. Because if you don't, people will. That's what people have done with DJI. But DJI didn't publish the specs. People just reverse engineered it anyway. If you make that path shorter, you get much more community support.
Oh, Bruce, it was the beginning of OpenTX. OpenTX, people reverse engineered the radio to get software running.
That was the original FlySky 9X that started the whole thing with ER9X. But since then, we've had available specs so that people can do it.
Because there was a connection between FrSky and the OpenTX team, and there was support from FrSky to the OpenTX. But what Bruce is proposing is basically get your radios out with the ethos OS, but allow people to push whatever and get the information out so that people can port the whatever TX system to the radio. Make it easy.
So you want the X20, the tandem lines to work with Edge TX, Open TX, that type of thing?
Well,
whatever.
Even if it's not FrSky's job, just give them the option of being able to, for that dev team, to do it. Do you know what I mean? We're not asking FrSky to do it, but publish the pin IO, the IO, all of the usual stuff that they need to publish for it. Look, if OpenTX or Edge TX wants to make a build for this radio, then here's how you would do it.
Okay, so you guys be more inclined to buy the radio if it had OpenTX, Edge TX, one of those things on it?
At least the opportunity of putting that in the radio. At least that opportunity. Don't close the radio.
Yeah, we were talking about that. My associate and I were talking about that. So I'll bounce that off him again because I've heard it from you guys, and we'll come back to that. But I will say that the Ethos operating system, it's not like it's crippled or something wrong with it. It is actually a damn good operating system. When I go through the whole presentation with people, by the time we talk about dual band and we talk about all the benefits of this and 24 channels, they ask me how much it is. And I say, well, the iX20 from Spectrum is $1,500 to $2,000, depending what you put on it. So you haven't heard of this brand, so it's probably going to sell at a discount. Would this be something you would look at if it's less than $1,000? And then people are like, yeah, I think that would sell really well. Well, it's $469. What? And then, people all of a sudden, everything lights up. I find that the thing is that what it has, and you can actually get the simulator where you can actually play with the Ethos operating system on your computer. It works almost identical to what it does in the radio. You can play with it yourself and you can see this does work better. I do see where we're going with this. The model setup's everything's a lot more intuitive with it. It is phenomenal. It's everything. The one thing I will say is that when you want to reverse a servo, you can reverse a servo in a matter of seconds. So it's just...
I can do that with OpenTX.
Steve, I have the ordering page of a distributor of FrSky here in Europe. It's out of stock, the X20X in black. So it's €499.
Right.
But my problem is, how many receivers must I buy to replace my ACCST V1s? 30?
What, D1s? You have the version 1 ACCST?
Yeah.
All right, so you can buy yourself a little $30 XJT light module. It'll go right in the back of it. Or you can, for $40, you can get yourself...
I have a multi-protocol module.
Okay, do you have a light version of it?
Yeah.
Okay, slides right in the back. There's one script you download, put it on, you put it on your SD card. All of a sudden, it all pops up, and will work with everything.
Okay, but I would rather prefer to do the radio to speak with the V1s.
Yeah, it will work with V1. So either the multi-protocol module. The problem is that the multi-protocol module has 4 different microcontrollers on it. The weakest one works with the FrSky.
Yeah. I know.
So it's, instead of being 100 milliwatts, it's 80 milliwatts or 75 or whatever it is. So it's the weakest one. If you want the true, also it has to be tuned. If you want the true FrSky experience, if you really do want to get the very most out of it,
I'm experienced with the multi-protocol modules. Yeah, but
I would get the XJT module because that's tuned and it has more power. XJT Lite is the one, and it works with. It has to make sure you have version 1.32 on there of Ethos, and if you don't have it, you just plug it in. The people ask if it comes with a charger, and I said your cell phone is your charger. It uses USB-C. You won't have a problem with it whatsoever.
What sort of operational times do you get out of the battery on that thing?
It's a 4,000 milliamp 2S battery, so I have it on. The thing, it will put out 1 full milliwatt of power, 1 full watt of power, 900 megahertz. If you want that, if you do that, then you're going to suck the battery down pretty quickly. But I'd say for most of it, because it's a dual band receiver. Now the thing is, this is where people get confused. Now I know, Bruce, you're still kind of like thinking about like 900 megahertz. It didn't work for me the first time. What happens is these receivers, some of the receivers we have are called the tandem receivers, that we call them the TDR18. We have an 18 channel receiver. Well, it's a 24 channel, but it has 18 inputs in there, or a 10 or a 6 or a 4. And what it does is, as you're receiving the signal, it works simultaneously, 2.4 gigahertz and 900 megahertz at the same time. So it prefers 2.4 gigahertz because it has low latency. Now, if you go down, if you don't use all 24 channels, you can get by with 8 channels. That'll be the lowest latency possible. And if 16 channels, most people will use 16 or 8, one of those two. But what will happen is that we used to talk about RSSI, relative radio signal strength indicator. Now we're talking about packets. So the idea is that when the transmitter's next to the receiver, for every 100 packets that are transmitted, 100 packets are received because they're so close to each other. As the receiver starts to move away at 2.4 gigahertz, you're going to start dropping packets. So it's going to go down to 70, then 60, and 50. By the time it hits 39 packets,
it's link quality, basically.
Yeah, it's saying we're having a problem. My signal is degrading. 900 megahertz fills in. It's a higher latency, but by the time you're flying, it's usually so far away that you don't really care. You just want to be able to bring your plane back or your quad or whatever, if you can see it.
So on this radio, can I use my X series receivers without a module on the back?
If they're running ACCST version 2, yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's got built-in support of some of the legacy receivers.
Right.
You don't have to use them.
It uses, so one of the selections off the right away, it has its access, its tandem, and its ACCST D16, which means that it works with all the X series receivers that are V2. And if you want V1, because I know that's important to you, it's just an XJT module and you'll have it.
And does it come in mode 1?
Yeah, it comes in, I believe that's radio configurable. The gimbals are also, so the idea is that you can you can have this so that this is like, some people, if you're flying,
for drones centered on both axes, on both sticks.
Right, you can do it either one. You can lock the throttle in the same way as this one, where it's in the middle. And that's important for people who drive the construction equipment. Or you can loosen the ratchet up on them. You can switch them over from one to the other. The switches are removable. I think the one thing that most people complain about this radio is that it's hard to see, but right in the front, right there, there's, let's see, like right there, the sliders kind of go the wrong direction. So there's actually caps.
Do they have a good strong detent in the middle? Physical detent in the sliders?
Good. What on the sliders?
A physical center point. It goes click, click.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's one of the weakest links of most of these other cheaper transmitters. The sliders are terrible. I use the sliders a lot for retracts and for flaps because I think it's more accessible. You don't have to find a switch. Your fingers are nearly always just sitting on the sliders. And besides, everybody likes proportional retracts. don't they? But okay, so send me one. I'll have a look at it and I'll tell you what I think.
There we go.
I send receivers.
Actually, that feels to me like that was a little bit of a positive moment, and I think you should probably quickly draw a line under
Well,
this.
I've got to say, Gary, my Tyrannus won't last forever. And to be totally honest now, Radio Master sent me a lovely leather-bound TX16, with the CNC gimbals and everything. And it's a nice radio, but it just even though it has a bit of heft, I'm sure there's a few bricks in there. It's just not as. I don't feel quite as confident as I do with my Tyrannus, to be totally honest. And it's sooner or later that Tyrannus is already, I've noticed the sticks are getting a bit worn, the center positions are a bit jittery. And I thought of updating to Hall Effect, but I thought, at some stage I will be replacing that radio. And although I love these things for drones and for some fixed wings, there are some models where you want a bigger transmitter with a bit of heft to it. Oh, that's important. Do you have a tray for that radio?
Yeah, there's actually, it's the
God.
Because you can't compete with GT unless you've got the tray with the full body harness and the coffee maker and the television set.
I have a tray. There's the other one I'm thinking of is something different. Yes, there's a tray you can get for this.
I don't want a tray.
You don't want a tray? Okay.
How much does it weigh? It's an important thing. We're getting older, our arms are getting weaker.
It was like about 900 grams, somewhere in the 900 gram range. And look right here. This is the most important selling point right here to Ian. Right there. Look at that. Ooh. Oh my gosh. Right there. It's a spot.
A neck strap.
I can hang it from my neck.
Yeah. Because 900 grams is a big ask from Ian's arms.
It's just kind of like really crunched over. Yeah. It is the people. I tell you, I don't know what it is about it. It's kind of like, okay, it feels great in your hands. Yeah. The dual band, the 24 channels. But when you put it all together, oh my God, this thing's lovable. And I would say that, if we're going to get you one, Bruce, the one you want is an X20.
Yeah. The other thing is, how well does that color LCD work in direct sunlight? That's been my bugbear with, one of the other reasons I wouldn't use a Radio Master TX16 as my everyday radio. It's got a color LCD. I walk out in the bright sun. I can't see the damn thing. I've got to find a shade so I can actually do anything. And I fly mostly in the sunshine. I don't like flying in the shade. So it's the weakest point of all those radios with the color displays is they're not transflective. They're just transmissive, and the backlight isn't strong enough. You can't read them in direct sunlight. Certainly not sunlight we have here.
That is balanced. Yes. So yeah, the brightness on this, what's kind of nice about the screen is it's not shiny, because a lot of these transmitters have shiny screens. So it's not shiny, so that you can turn up the brightness. It's going to get up your batteries a little bit faster. The monitor uses a lot. Not a monitor of any type usually uses a lot of energy. But the thing is that you can look at in bright sunlight and you can get things done. I would say the X20, one of the weaknesses of the X18 is not so much the case for the X18. The X20 is fantastic.
Yeah, if they can solve the LCD thing. I mean, one of the Futabas had a totally transflective display, which if you got it angled right, you could see it in bright sunlight, color display. But the displays I've seen today have been a bit disappointing. How many nits is the display, do you know?
No, I don't.
800, I believe.
Okay, it'd be a good figure to put on the bullet point sheet. If it's high enough, it becomes a selling point.
Yeah, there's I was looking for 1 second. I think I got it.
Should we do a normal trick and all go while he
I don't want to look for it. I have a sheet where it has all the bullet points on it. It's not handy right this second, but yeah.
Where did you get 800 from, Louis?
No, sorry.
I'll look for it here.
It's 800 is the resolution.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Bruce can talk about me when I'm gone. So
I don't think FrSky published the nits because they haven't published it on the HD0 monitor either. Because I was asking about that the other day.
Let's see. We've got
because we don't all fly in the UK where it's cloudy every day.
And is that the standard tandem or the tandem S?
Okay, I'll explain what the tandem and tandem S says. So it's 800 by 600 display on the X20.
Yeah, but
we don't know the nits.
So we'd have to actually see it in the sunlight to determine how much of an advance it is over the early displays.
I've had so many people take the radio and they go out in the sunlight and they turn up the brightness and they say, yeah, this is fine. So yeah, it does work great. And I think it's really a function because it has a matte screen is what it does. The X18S is 480 by 320, so it's a smaller display. So one thing I wish we had done, I wish we had the same screen on this X20 on the X18. That would have been just like so killer. So that's one of the things I've been suggesting to the company. We got to do this. This was amazing if you could do it. But, you know, for older guys like myself,
Yeah.
He nearly got into trouble there, didn't he, Gary? Eh?
Yeah.
He did. Yeah,
I was
yeah,
going to
well
say
cool.
Bruce, but no, this screen is big enough for you to actually read without glasses on. So that's, and be able to function and move around. It really is. I mean, I don't know. If it was one-off, where, you know, it's a couple of people liked it. No, it's kind of like I see people looking at it, and I think like, there's no way these people are going to buy it, and I'll just show it to them anyways. And the next thing you know, they're buying it, and I'm like, wow, you just made a major decision, and because they're so impressed with the radio, with all it can do. And, you know, the guys, the guys who come along and say, well, I got Jetty and I have $30,000 jets, and, you know, I don't trust in anything less than a high quality radio like Jetty. I go, okay, great. You know, well, the thing about your Jetty is that it works off of it's a dual band 2.4 gigahertz receiver, and then there's the 900 megahertz. But to get to 900 megahertz, you have to go into failsafe first. Whereas ours doesn't do that. What happens? The signal degrades. It goes from 2.4 to 900 megahertz instantly. So, you know, it's kind of.
So why don't they transmit simultaneously and just choose the best packets as they arrive?
I think it's because there's an older system. Maybe they've been out for quite a few years. I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking about FrSky as well. I mean, you guys are basically switching over at some stage instead of just basically monitoring both.
That's the thing. Streams. It does monitor both channels simultaneously. Okay. Yeah. It just what it does is it has a priority on 2.4 gigahertz because it has lower latency.
And speaking of outputs, you've got obviously 18 channel receivers with all the servo connectors. What serial bus outputs do you have?
S bus. Okay, so we have S bus, S port, and so the company now has. This is where things get confusing. So they have S bus, S port 2, F port 2, and F bus. So
no crossfire.
Oh, will it work with Crossfire?
Well, no, the Crossfire is a serial output, very low latency, lower than S bus. So if people want super low latency with a serial output to a flight controller, they'll choose the Crossfire interface rather than S bus.
On the receivers, I've never seen a Crossfire output. No.
CRFS. Yeah, pretty much everything in FPV now is that.
Right. Are you sure on the receivers coming out?
On the receiver, yeah. The whole protocol.
You know what it is, because you're talking about ELRS and Crossfire primarily, right?
Yes. There's a bit of a complication there. Well, we shouldn't call it Crossfire. You got Crossfire as a system, and then the protocol, which is Crossfire, but it is distinguished by the four-letter term for it, CRFS.
And that's what the ELRS is.
That's what Express LRS has adopted, Crossfire has adopted. Express LRS sort of borrowed, but it's become the native protocol pretty much between those two systems. Yeah.
It's the new serial to the from the receiver to the flight controller.
It's even going further now.
Or DSM. Instead of S-Bus or DSM, DSM2, DSMX, Graupner, whatever, it's Crossfire.
Yeah.
So
for instance, Express LRS.
Is that working with the same? The signal and the
similar signaling. Yes.
The signal and the telemetry are using the same protocol.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Everything's on the same protocol.
That's F-Bus.
That's what you're calling it. That's what they're calling F-Bus. Okay.
But it's not widely supported by other flight controllers and other bits of third parties. It's become the de facto standard. The CRSF is the de facto standard if you want to interface with that stuff. So you could be locking yourself out of a bit of a market there, because I know a lot of more sophisticated fixed wing are choosing to put flight controllers in these days.
Right. That's kind of what the whole community is about with INAV Fixed Wing Group and the flight controllers, and so they're. I do understand the ELRS is picked up in popularity. It's really picked up when I see in the drone racing. I see the ELRS more than I do anything else. these days, as far as the link that they're using for race quads. So
that's primarily due to low latency. They got super low latency with ELRS. It's tuned for that very low latency, and to get that, they need to use a bus that's faster than S-bus, which is why they've gone with the CRSF. So it's a, I don't know, it's a market you'll be addressing with your radios though, because they're not going to go dual frequency. They're not concerned with anything but latency.
I don't even know what because we've got ExpressRS radios running at 1,000 hertz at the moment. That's the packet rate that they're running on at maximum. But from a standard radio, for instance, the T16s will get 500 hertz from the sticks. I don't know what your radios are going to be capable of natively, if you know what I mean, which is from the sticks to the module port. Because there's obviously differences between them. But yeah, but to give you an idea, ExpressRS is pushed up to 1,000 hertz now. Yeah,
I mean, this is the thing is like this is like a segment of the market where it's kind of there's a lot of focus on that segment of the market, the race quad, and a lot of guys. I just don't know in the United States. It's just I don't know what happened. That market is kind of shifted to some extent, and like the races aren't as big as they used to be in the United States.
That was a boom. It's well past its peak. People that are buying these quads these days are more going into freestyle, flying bandos and aerobatics and that sort of stuff. They're not so much focused on racing. It's a very, very niche, very small market, and I don't think that's FrSky's market. I wouldn't invest the money to get into that market because I don't think it's going to get any bigger. I think that FrSky's been quite clever in identifying a market where they still have some competitive edge, which is the larger fixed wing marketplace. But I don't think they should. They should still work very hard to embrace further down the chain as well, because that's if you just add a bit of stuff to your gear and make it open source, and it's money for jam. You're not having to change your hardware.
Okay, so that's the other thing I'm going to take away from the conversation is let's send out some of our sample radios to people who develop OpenTX, EdgeTX, so they can write a protocol, have that included. It's interesting. I don't know the problem we have right now. So it's OpenTX is pretty much is our protocol. I mean, what we stand behind, that's we put on our radios to this day. EdgeTX is, if we ask anything from EdgeTX, the first question is, are you going to fund us back? And we're kind of like, baby, we funded you for the last 10 years.
I suppose we can. Sorry, and you go, then I'll go. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, quickly. I think the really important one is they now need a path for people to upgrade. Some of the real roadblocks here is, okay, it's based on OpenTX, yet they can't easily migrate. So I think what FrSky need to do is, if they're not going to support the system, then they need a path for those users to come over. If you want people to come over, I don't want to set up 15 radios from scratch, 15 models from scratch.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So that was the model converter from OpenTX to bring it over to ours.
To be honest, if they got any sense, you want to try and convert one from OpenTX, Spectrum. If you really want to be clever, right, you want to get it from everyone else's as well to give people the simplest path into the radio. And whilst doing it from other manufacturers might not be the you want to make it as easy as possible for people to migrate.
Yeah, some of the Spectrum radios, some of them have ways for you to get the information off there. Some of them don't, and that's the problem. I know one guy who told a story. I've heard him tell it probably 10 times already. He got his garage broken into and all his stuff was stolen, including his radio, and he's really upset because he had 10 years of perfection on his models, and then that went with the radio. There's had no way to back it up because it was Spectrum. So
well, then, and because I've just seen the time, and I do want to very quickly talk about the new Phantom 4 that came out today. Sorry, the whatever
Mavic
it is,
3
Mavic.
Enterprise.
Phantom 4, isn't it? The new one, or Phantom 5. But I think the real, to me, the bottom line, firstly, I've got to thank you, Steve. You've taken tremendous flack from us.
So, round of applause. Very,
very impressed with the amount of flack that you've
people
taken.
in headquarters, I hope I still have my job. Thank you very much.
You get a raise after. You get a raise after this,
guys.
I mean,
guys.
he even shaved his head so he'd fit in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And all of those nice comments you made about So as I say, all those nice comments you made about Bruce at the start, you now realise that are completely untrue.
That
So
Tell the guys
Didn't
at
grow up being
headquarters that in Europe there are no radios, and I was trying to buy 31 receivers. I couldn't.
Oh, so you're talking about the X8, X20?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm. That's the other thing I'm working on right now. Is kind of like, we got a shipment. I came back from this long road trip, and I like, wow, we have all these wonderful radios that just showed up in our shipment. And I'm like, yay! And then like, okay, 25 are going to Joe Null, and this is going to go to Best of the West, and it's kind of like, I'm like looking at the owner. I'm like, I work here now, man. We need inventory, so tell people, get going on this. If you want to. That's the one thing that kind of scares me more than anything else. It's not. I used to be worried that the radio wouldn't be accepted. Now I'm worried about running out of inventory, and that's a real serious concern. Where, we get a customer and they're like, "We're selling these radios and we can't get them anymore," and that's really that's something that I've seen with other manufacturers, and it really undermines their credibility. And so, yeah, I'm sorry that it's out of stock, but yeah, I'm like, listen, let's get this
Nothing
going.
to do with you. It's Europe.
I'll lend you my one, Louis.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, but but things like that is honest in yourself. So if you, what am I trying to say there? What I'm trying to say is, if you feel that FrSky's sort of left the flavor of the month for the community, just communications like that and frequently will make the difference. You say we've got a problem, people understand it. When companies don't admit that, we got a little bit of issue with stock, or then that's when people start getting angry. So what I think my takeaway before we move on to the new Phantom, my takeaway is very briefly on the new Phantom. My takeaway is that we love the hardware. A lot of us are still using the old hardware. Open it up, and I think you'll find a lot of people becoming very interested.
No, because they gained a lot of goodwill. They were responsible for getting modern digital radios in the hands of lots of people. Their Tyrannies opened up the door tremendously. So they were perhaps one of the responsible people to get 2.4 digital radios in the hands of people.
Yeah, well, that's how I got into. It's exactly how I got into 2.4.
Yep. Yeah, the modules got people shifted onto the FrSky protocol, and then naturally they bought the radio. It was good planning on their part.
That's exactly my that is my journey. Moduling that, and then we might as well have one of those, and then say people. The reason I've got so many is because I would have some for my fixed wing stuff and some for my multi-rotors, and then leave it in their case. That's why. But anyway,
before you move on, can I just say one thing? Bruce, can I put you on the spot really quick? We have you on Wing Talk. It's about once a month. It's a Sunday night. It's Sunday night at 6 p.m. British time. So I don't know what time it is in your part of the world. It's probably somewhere similar to that.
It's 7 a.m. We're 13 hours ahead of GMT at the moment. So that's fine.
Okay, yeah. So it would be Monday morning, 7 a.m. and it's every third Thursday, every third Sunday, I should say. Would love to have you on. Would love to. It's like this. It's the chat among guys. You have a great time, and it would be great. Really honored. Really appreciate it. The other thing is, since you didn't do such a good job of killing me, you can find me at Steve at. My email address is right there. Some things I can address, some things I can't address. I can't not address what happened in the years 2018 to 2020. But if you reach out to me, I will be responsive. So thank you so much for having me on. And with that, let's hear about the Mavic 3.
Yeah.
We'll
just
small Chinese manufacturer, isn't it?
Yeah, Ian will know all about that. So it's got a proper shutter. Is that the bottom line?
It's here. I got it here.
Should we try to do force FrSky to make the X20 radio work with the with the Mavic 3?
It won't. No, it's not going to happen.
Come on.
I
Come on,
think
let's
what's
try.
interesting. I think what's interesting about it is the price. Do you know what I
Why
mean?
is
I
it?
think what's interesting about the product is the price more than anything.
Have you seen the latest price?
I'm looking at the price on Gary's website at the moment. As the thermal version, 4,500 quid in the UK, basically. Not bad. Not bad. 2,800 for the standard enterprise version. It's hard to get excited about some of these enterprise drones because they're just putting the stuff in from other models into this now, and it's that all DJI are doing is repackaging what they've done and made it smaller, and that's exactly what they've done here. Is it a mechanical shutter? Because I can't see.
It's a mechanical shutter.
Yeah, mechanical shutter.
On which camera?
On
Both,
the optical
The
one.
wide angle.
Yeah.
The wide angle, not the zoom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But on both versions, because there's more than one version of it, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Mechanical shutter up to 2,000 speed. So it became an interesting vehicle now.
Very quickly. Yeah. When I was looking through the specs earlier today,
its capture rate is good.
Yeah. I heard it earlier, but I couldn't confirm it when I was back and forth. It's interesting that this is the first drone since the Phantom 4 to have a mechanical shutter. It's taken them this long to make, since the Phantom 4 Pro, I should say, version 2.
The sensor is quite good.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's taken them this long to get back to it. They'll sell a lot of these. I'll be honest. At that price point, they'll sell an awful lot of them.
And they announced already SDK support. Although I was checking on the site, and at least the site hasn't been updated to say support of the Phantom 5. The Mavic 3.
And interestingly, it's using the Pilot 2 app. So again, they've spun another new app for it. It's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. Does support DJI Terra and Flight Hub 2, so it means the people who
flight operations software they have.
It's in there as well.
Mapping and stuff, and one button inspection they're claiming and things like that. So we'll have to see how that works.
And RTK, look. RTK.
RTK. And the speaker. The speaker is fundamental.
The speaker is actually
we are kidding, but there are very good users of the speaker. There are very good users of the speaker.
There are. It's funny. It's one of those little features you think is a bit until you use it and suddenly realize it's very good.
Yeah.
It's hard to say it's anything impressive. It's not. It's everything in the same smaller package.
It's everything that was due for them to do from the start of the Mavic 3. They should have done the Mavic 3 Enterprise when they launched the Mavic 3. They just waited too long. People are scrambling to find other solutions.
I don't think they've waited, Louis. I've been talking to some people, and they've been going through a lot in China, and DJI have just moved headquarters. But on top of that, the COVID lockdowns are hitting everyone hard over there. It's hitting all manufacturers who make anything in China right now. You know, they aren't, as much as the world is focusing on other political issues right now, China is far from back to normal. They've got power outage issues. They've got all sorts of problems over there at the moment, and it is affecting everyone. And it's not just about the chip shortage anymore. You may have a whole host of chips. Now you've got to be able to have the ability to manufacture them. They're still closing off entire towns and cities and buildings when COVID hits. They're still doing that. So China's backed itself up into a bit of a problem on COVID because the rest of the world has sort of moved on, but they haven't. And because they didn't take the same stance as the rest of the world, they're now suffering for that, and their economy, they need to get back up and running.
It's more evolutionary than revolutionary, but then we've been saying
Yeah.
that of them. That is the market now. It's evolution, not revolution. We're not
I think
seeing a jump.
it'll probably be a
Unless you're in
fantastic
Russia.
product.
Yes,
Well,
quite so.
I think
But-
it'll probably be one of the better products they've released in a very long time. I think it feels like it's going to have a lot of the right DNA in it. I have a feeling it will be quite.
They had to
pushing.
cover up the lower end of the industrial market because they have the M30.
Yeah. That's exactly
And
what
the
I was
Mavic 2
saying.
Enterprise, Louis, which
Yeah,
is very old. The Mavic
they've
2
got a
No,
very
they-
nice
they-
line now, haven't they?
Come on,
They
the
got a
Mavic
very
2
nice line.
Enterprise was already too old.
Yeah, and
well,
you didn't have radio, and it wasn't radiometric compatible either, was it?
Yeah.
So
Camera drones are so boring.
Yeah,
It's what's
They
really
are.
interesting actually is the potential that's going to be now for a new Mavic 3 Basic, because that's what the next. There's a lot of hints that I'm guessing the Mavic 3 hasn't sold particularly well, and the Mavic 3 Basic is around the corner, taking out that second camera. And I do wonder what would be interesting is, will they put it in with this camera with the mechanical shutter? So if you're into real estate, it could be worth waiting. It could be worth.
I don't think
I
so.
wouldn't rush out.
No, I would think that a camera similar to the one of the Air 2S or something around that.
Well, it's meant to be 4/3. It's the same 4/3 sensor, Louis. It's just losing the second.
Yeah.
They're losing the second sensor and they're making it a single camera model. But if that's the case with that space, maybe they might go mechanical shutter on that as well. You never know. Because look, the Phantom 4 Pro was not the Phantom 4 Pro was not a product made for inspection and mapping. That product was a consumer product. It was consumer derived and driven. It just became the tool of the industry, didn't it?
That was before the strategy of DJI to focus on the enterprise market where the margins are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, look, we have definitely been going over 2 hours today with my fumble at the beginning. So I think we should draw a line under everything. Run away, dear viewers, wherever you are. Thank you very much for bearing with us. Steve, again, thank you very much for being so candid and honest. We appreciate that a lot around here.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
We look forward to seeing Bruce's rant on that radio sometime in the future. And we'll catch you all again, 2100 GMT next week. I hope I do a better job. Look after everyone. Look after yourselves, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
One click to